Welcome to the sleep hours, the only place where cartoons fall asleep before you do. So grab your blanket, tuck in your favorite plushie, and let's get weird. Tonight, drift into a world of calm and comfort as we follow Tom and Jerry on a very special day, a day where the chase takes a pause and an unexpected friendship blossoms. Let the warmth of the sun, the soft purrs, and the gentle rustle of the evening guide you into peace. Settle in, breathe slowly, and prepare to relax as the quiet truce unfolds. The evening had been like so many others in that familiar little house. The sky outside was painted in soft purples and fading gold, the last streaks of daylight stretching across the window panes. A gentle hush settled over the neighborhood, the kind of quiet that always seemed to make the ticking clock in the hallway sound just a little louder. The house itself was warm, lived in, with a faint smell of supper lingering in the air, though its owner had long since gone off to bed. Down in the living room, Tom lay sprawled across the carpet, his paw draped lazily over his head. His fur still ruffled from the day's antics, his tail twitching once or twice out of habit. As if even in this moment of rest, he couldn't quite stop being alert. His ears flicked at every creak of the floorboards, at every rustle of the curtains. Yet tonight there was no chase, no clattering of pans, no triumphant squeak from behind the furniture. It was oddly calm. Jerry, of course, had been watching him from his tiny mouse hole near the corner. The little round door sat half hidden behind the baseboard, painted dark with age. Jerry poked his whiskered nose out cautiously, his bright eyes glinting in the lamplight. Usually this would be the time he'd tiptoe into the kitchen, maybe sneak away with a piece of cheese, and dart back to his hideout while Tom dozed half aware. But tonight Jerry paused. Something about Tom's stillness didn't invite mischief. Instead, it invited curiosity. The mouse crept forward, his tiny feet making the faintest tap on the wood. He tugged a crumb of bread he'd stashed earlier and nibbled it quietly, all while glancing at Tom. The cat's breathing was steady, though every now and then his eyelids fluttered, as if he were half dreaming. Jerry knew that look. It was the look Tom wore when he was tired, but refused to admit defeat. Tom opened one eye lazily and saw Jerry perched on the floor. Normally this would have triggered the instinctive jump, the hiss, the pounce, but instead Tom just blinked. His paw twitched as if to lift, but he let it drop again with a sigh that sounded almost human. Jerry tilted his head. Well, that's new, he thought to himself, squeaking softly under his breath. He didn't run, he didn't need to. Tom's expression was not the sharp-toothed grin of a hunter, nor the sly grin of a schemer. It was tired, bone-deep tired. The house's old grandfather clock chimed, a low, resonant sound that carried through the living room. 11 o'clock. Both cat and mouse turned their heads slightly toward it, as though the sound reminded them of something they'd both been avoiding all day. Rest. Jerry padded a little closer, daring himself to cross into Tom's reach. Tom's whiskers twitched, but he made no move. Instead, he let out another long sigh and shifted onto his side, curling his tail toward his chest. The couch cushion above sagged faintly as if agreeing with the mood of the night. Outside, crickets chirped, their steady rhythm filling the silence between the tick of the clock and the occasional groan of the wooden beams. A soft breeze slipped through the open window, carrying with it the faintest smell of grass and earth cooling in the night. Jerry climbed onto a small stack of books that had been left beside the armchair. From this higher perch, he could watch Tom more closely, his eyes narrowing thoughtfully. He's not even trying tonight, Jerry considered. Not a paw raised, not a claw sharpened. Maybe, just maybe, it's safe. Tom cracked one eye open again, his green gaze meeting Jerry's from across the room. There was no hostility in it, no sharpness, just a heavy-lidded weariness. He gave a small shrug, the kind that said, "Do whatever you want. Just don't wake me up." Jerry couldn't help it. He chuckled, a tiny squeak of amusement that echoed faintly in the stillness. Slowly, carefully, he scampered down from the books and padded toward Tom, his tiny tail swishing behind him. He kept a respectful distance, but close enough to feel bold. The unlikely calm stretched on, unusual but not unwelcome. For once, neither wanted to be the first to break the spell. Tom rested his chin on his paw, his eyes fluttering shut again. Jerry sat a foot or two away, nibbling quietly at his crumb, glancing at the cat every so often. It was almost companionable. From the kitchen, the hum of the refrigerator joined the chorus of night sounds, low and steady. The air had that feeling of summer nights, when the heat finally fades and the world seems to exhale in relief. The whole house, in its own way, seemed ready to sleep. Jerry yawned, stretching his tiny arms out wide. Tom caught it in the corner of his vision and let out a massive yawn of his own, his jaws stretching comically wide until Jerry couldn't help but giggle again. The mouse's laughter was not mocking, it was warm, almost like the laughter of an old friend who knew the quirks of someone all too well. It was in that small, quiet exchange that the idea of a truce began to blossom. Neither said it, of course, neither could. But in the hush of the living room, with the clock ticking and the crickets chirping, it was understood. Tonight there would be no chase, no tricks, no traps. Tonight there would only be quiet. Tom gave a faint grunt as he adjusted on the carpet, stretching his limbs long before curling them back in. His ears drooped slightly, not in defeat, but in surrender to the slow heaviness of the night. Jerry, sensing the unusual stillness, dared to scuttle a little closer, his crumb still in paw. He stopped just at the edge of Tom's tail. The great striped appendage curled like a protective wall. Tom flicked it once gently as if to test Jerry's nerves. Normally the mouse would have darted back in a panic, but tonight Jerry stood firm, chest puffed out in tiny defiance. Tom's lips curled in the ghost of a smirk before he lowered his head again onto his paws. Jerry edged closer still, tiny steps echoing like drum beats in his ears. He reached the soft fur of Tom's tail and, with the kind of daring he rarely displayed without an escape plan, leaned against it. The tail twitched, but did not strike. Tom's eyes remained closed, his chest rising and falling in that steady rhythm of a creature halfway to slumber. Jerry leaned his back against the warm fur, surprised by its softness. The warmth radiated through him, chasing away the cool of the wooden floor. He closed his eyes for a brief moment, nibbling his crumb absent-mindedly. Never before had he been so close without fear of claws. The living room seemed larger in the stillness. Shadows stretched long across the rug, flickering gently as the breeze tugged at the curtains. The lampshade swayed just slightly, casting shapes that danced on the wall. Jerry's whiskers twitched as he watched them, but Tom didn't stir. The cat had slipped into that liminal place between wakefulness and dream, where even the sound of his own purr began to hum low in his chest. Yes, Tom was purring. Not the sharp, smug kind that followed a victory, but a soft, absent rumble, like distant thunder rolling lazily across the sky. Jerry felt it through the tail against his back, the vibration buzzing gently like a lullaby. He blinked, unsure whether to trust it, but the sound was soothing. The mouse yawned again, this time wider, his eyes drooping as the warmth and rhythm lulled him. He shook himself awake with a tiny squeak, unwilling to be the first to fully give in. He knew Tom. He knew the cat's tricks. But something told him this was different. Tom's tail curled slightly, almost protectively, as if instinctively keeping Jerry in place. The mouse froze at first, eyes wide, but when nothing more happened, he slowly allowed himself to relax again. The night wore on, the house creaking softly like an old friend settling into its own bed. From outside came the distant call of an owl, its low hoot blending with the chirping crickets. The world felt wrapped in velvet, softened at the edges, every sound a hushed reminder that night belonged to peace. Jerry rubbed his tiny eyes and stood on tiptoe, peering up at Tom's face. The cat's expression was uncharacteristically serene, his mouth slack, ears no longer twitching at every noise. The usual scheming spark was gone from his features, replaced by a kind of boyish calm that Jerry almost didn't recognize. He tilted his head, a soft chuckle escaping him. "You look ridiculous when you're not chasing me," he seemed to say. Tom's ear flicked faintly as though he had heard that unspoken thought, but he didn't open his eyes. His purr deepened, steady and low, a sound that filled the silence better than words ever could. Jerry sat back down, hugging his crumb close to his chest like a teddy bear. He gnawed quietly, savoring it, though his attention kept drifting back to the cat. Something about this truce, unspoken though it was, felt right. Minutes passed this way, unmeasured, drifting by in the gentle current of stillness. The clock ticked. The wind brushed the curtains. The purr vibrated softly beneath Jerry's back. Then, with the careless drama of someone entirely unbothered, Tom shifted again. His paw slid forward, nearly brushing Jerry. The mouse squeaked and hopped backward, ready to dart under the armchair. But Tom did not swipe. His paw simply rested there, open, relaxed, almost like an invitation. Jerry blinked, his tiny heart racing. He crept forward, cautious step by cautious step, until he stood at the edge of the great paw. It was enormous compared to him, wide and padded, with claws retracted fully. The mouse touched it lightly with his whiskers, testing. No reaction. He laid his paw against it, tentative. Still nothing. Tom was deep in his doze now, caught somewhere between the waking world and the one that belonged to dreams. Jerry sighed softly, not in fear, but in wonder. Well, if this is a trick, he thought, it's the laziest one you've ever pulled. And with that, he leaned against the paw as though it were a pillow. The warmth of it was undeniable, and the steady vibration of the purr soon began to sink into his very bones. It was, perhaps, the strangest truce in all their history, not declared, not argued, not planned, simply felt. The mouse's eyelids grew heavier. His tiny breath slowed, his crumb forgotten in his paws. Tom, too, drifted deeper, his ears no longer twitching, his whiskers no longer twitching with the hint of dreams. They were simply resting together. And in that old house, so often filled with chaos and laughter, and the clamor of cartoon battles, silence settled like a blanket. The first night of peace between Tom and Jerry had begun. The night stretched on slow and sweet, like honey poured from a spoon. Tom's chest rose and fell with a steady rhythm, each exhale brushing the carpet in the softest sighs. His paw remained limp, the one Jerry leaned against, fingers twitching faintly only when a deeper dream tugged at him. The purr rumbled on, a comforting hum that filled the silence like a lullaby only a cat could sing. Jerry, for once, didn't feel the need to be quick. He didn't feel the need to hide or to plan or to outwit. He sat curled against the paw, his crumb resting forgotten beside him. His eyelids lowered, then fluttered open again as though he couldn't quite believe this was real. But the warmth was undeniable, and the rhythm of Tom's body against his tiny frame lulled him further into stillness. A beam of moonlight slipped through the curtains, casting its glow across the living room rug. It lit Tom's whiskers silver, making them glint softly with each breath. Jerry shifted so the glow touched him too, the little mouse basking in the same light as his giant frenemy. For the first time in what felt like forever, there was no line drawn between them. No predator, no prey. Just two tired souls sharing the same quiet night. Every so often, Tom's ear would twitch at a sound, the rustle of leaves outside, the squeak of the refrigerator, the groan of a wooden beam, but instead of springing into action, he'd let it go. He'd sink further into his rest, trusting the night to remain as gentle as it was. Jerry mirrored him in miniature. A flick of whiskers, a twitch of his tiny tail, then the small surrender of sleepiness, pulling him back into calm. The clock chimed again. Midnight. Its low note seemed to deepen the silence instead of breaking it. Tom stirred faintly, stretching one leg out across the rug with a lazy grunt, then curling again. Jerry had to hop back an inch to avoid being nudged aside, but he didn't scamper away. Instead, he tucked himself in closer to the warmth of Tom's side. The carpet was cozy, but the heat of another creature nearby was something else entirely. Tom's purrs slowed, deepened, softened. Jerry could feel it through his whole tiny body. He matched his breathing to it, inhaling when the rumble swelled, exhaling when it faded. Slowly, steadily, the rhythm drew him into a calm that felt unfamiliar and yet so welcome. For a fleeting moment, Jerry's old instincts tried to nudge him awake. "This is Tom," his mind whispered. "This is the cat who's chased you across rooms, across rooftops, into buckets of water, out of pies cooling on the windowsill. This is the cat who never lets you rest." But the warmth pressed against him answered louder. "Not tonight." Tom shifted again, this time rolling slightly onto his side, his face turned closer toward Jerry. The mouse squeaked softly in surprise, but the cat remained entirely at ease, his breathing slow, his eyes sealed shut beneath heavy lids. His mouth opened just slightly in a loose half-smile, as if the dream he chased in his sleep was kinder than any chase in waking life. Jerry sat for a long moment, watching that calm face. It struck him as almost absurd. Here was Tom, the grand schemer, the eternal chaser, looking as harmless as a kitten. Jerry's whiskers twitched in amusement. "You wouldn't last a second in this state if you had to chase me," he thought, a smile tugging at his tiny mouth. But his smile softened quickly. "And maybe you don't want to tonight." The little mouse reached for his crumb again, chewing slowly now, each bite quiet and deliberate. He didn't rush, he didn't hide. He simply ate beside the giant who had once been his nightmare. And when he was done, he tucked what was left of the crumb against Tom's paw, a tiny gesture, as if leaving a peace offering. The cat stirred faintly, sniffed in his sleep, then let out a long sigh. His paw shifted slightly, almost curling protectively around the crumb, and by accident, around Jerry too. The mouse froze, eyes wide for a moment. But Tom didn't grab, didn't tighten, didn't pounce. The paw remained loose, soft, and warm. And so Jerry let it be. He let himself remain in the circle of Tom's relaxed paw, a tiny island of safety he never thought he'd find there. His tail curled around him, his breathing slowed to match Tom's again. The house grew quieter still, the kind of silence that wrapped itself around both of them like a blanket. In the kitchen, the refrigerator gave one final hum before settling into silence. Outside, the crickets kept up their chorus, joined by the distant drip of water from the garden hose. It was a sleepy song of the world itself, lulling everything into calm. Jerry's eyes drooped once and then twice. He fought it, as he always did. But tonight there was no battle worth waging. His tiny body finally gave in, curling tighter against Tom's fur. His whiskers twitched once, then stilled. His tiny squeaks of breath softened into the gentlest snores. Tom's purr continued, steady as a metronome. He did not stir at Jerry's closeness. He did not open one eye in mischief. He simply slept, as though somewhere deep down he had always known this was possible. A night without rivalry, a night without running, a night where they both belonged to the same silence. And as the moon rose higher, spilling silver across the world outside, Tom and Jerry rested together for the very first time. The truce, though unspoken, held strong, and the house, often filled with chaos and crashing, finally knew peace. The living room clock ticked steadily on, marking each passing minute with a soft click that seemed to echo louder in the quiet. The air in the house grew cooler as the night deepened, but the warmth between cat and mouse held strong, wrapping them in a comfort neither had sought, but both now quietly accepted. Tom shifted once more, rolling onto his back this time with the lazy clumsiness of a creature entirely at ease. His legs sprawled wide, his belly exposed to the cool air. Jerry, startled by the sudden movement, scurried a few inches toward the edge of the rug, but when he looked back, expecting claws or a swat, all he saw was Tom's head tilted to one side, his mouth open in a gentle snore that rattled the whiskers on his cheeks. The mouse let out a quiet laugh, shaking his head. Ridiculous, he thought, his squeak carrying no malice. He crept back toward Tom, watching as the cat's paws twitched slightly, perhaps chasing dream birds or dream mice in some gentle, harmless way. Whatever chase Tom's mind conjured now, it lacked the sharp edges of his waking schemes. Jerry found himself drawn again to the warmth radiating off Tom's fur. He perched on the rise of Tom's side, tiny paws pressing lightly against the rise and fall of the cat's breathing. It was like sitting on a moving hill, steady and rhythmic, swaying him gently as though he were on a boat adrift in the calmest of seas. The moonlight shifted as clouds passed overhead, bathing the room in alternating shades of silver and shadow. Jerry's eyes grew heavy once more, his body rocked by the rhythm of Tom's chest. He resisted for a moment, ever cautious, but the pull of sleep was stronger than habit. Tom murmured something in his sleep, a low sound that was neither a growl nor a laugh. Jerry stiffened, ears perked, but the sound faded into the steady rumble of the purr again. The cat's dreams were harmless tonight, perhaps they were even kind. Jerry curled himself into a ball atop Tom's side, his tail wrapping neatly around him. He rested his head against the fur, feeling the vibration of the purr through his entire body. His eyelids fluttered shut, this time without a fight. The truce had claimed him completely. Outside, the wind shifted, carrying with it the scent of jasmine from the garden. The cricket's song rose and fell, joined by the faraway bark of a dog and the occasional rustle of leaves. The world outside carried on, but within the house everything stilled, save for the gentle duet of snores, Tom's deep and rolling, Jerry's light and quick. In the upstairs bedroom, their human owner turned in her sleep, oblivious to the miracle unfolding below. If she had come down then, she would have gasped at the sight of her troublesome cat and his eternal rival nestled so close. But the house kept its secret, holding the quiet truce safe in its walls. The minutes melted into one another, the night unfolding like a slow lullaby. Jerry dreamed now, his tiny whiskers twitching as his mind wandered through fields of cheese and endless crumbs. Tom dreamed too, his paws paddling faintly as though running, though his expression remained peaceful. Perhaps, in some unspoken way, their dreams met in the middle, not of chase, not of rivalry, but of companionship. A log in the fireplace cracked faintly, releasing a last whisper of smoke into the chimney. The glow of the embers cast a soft light that joined the moon's silver touch, bathing both cat and mouse in a blanket of warmth. The house sighed with them, content at last. Jerry stirred briefly, rolling to one side and pressing himself closer against Tom's fur. Tom's paw flopped lazily across his side, not in attack but in accident, and Jerry didn't move. He allowed it. He allowed the weight, the warmth, the strange security of being held by the very creature who had once been his terror. For the first time, Jerry felt safe in the most unlikely of places. And Tom, for the first time, slept without the need to guard his space from the tiniest of intruders. The quiet truce was not declared in words, not signed by paw or tail. It lived in this moment, in this night, in the stillness that bound them together. It was fragile, perhaps, like the flame of the dying fire. But it was real. And as the hour hand crept toward 1 in the morning, Tom and Jerry drifted deeper into slumber, locked not in battle but in peace. The house, at last, was asleep with them. The silence that lingered in the room was soft, but not empty. It carried warmth, the kind that comes only when two restless hearts finally surrender to stillness. The chase had paused, not in defeat, but in quiet understanding. The night deepened further, draping the house in velvet shadows. The ticking clock softened, its rhythm steady, as though it too had slowed to match the pace of their breathing. Outside, the world dreamed under the stars, while inside, cat and mouse shared a peace no one would believe. Tom's paw twitched once, then stilled. Jerry's whiskers brushed against the rise of his chest as he sighed in sleep. For a fleeting moment, their tiny movements seemed to answer each other, a silent conversation woven into dreams. And so the night held them both predator and prey, rivals turned companions in a truce that could last only until dawn, yet felt eternal in the quiet hours of the night. The first faint hint of dawn seeped through the curtains, painting the living room in soft blushes of pink and gold. The world outside began to stretch awake, though the house itself remained calm, cradling its two unlikely companions in the lingering hush of night. Tom stirred gently, his paw flexing as if testing the softness of the carpet beneath him. A long, lazy yawn stretched across his face, showing just a glimpse of his tiny, sharp teeth, but tonight they weren't for chasing. Jerry twitched in his sleep, his little nose wriggling as if sniffing dreams of cheese or mischief. The warmth of Tom's fur pressed against him like a gentle blanket, and for the first time, he didn't feel the urge to flee. Instead, he shifted slightly, curling tighter into the reassuring rhythm of Tom's chest. The cat's purr rumbled softly, almost like the low hum of a spring morning, steady and comforting. A tiny beam of sunlight touched Jerry's whiskers, making them glint like silver threads. He blinked awake, eyes adjusting slowly to the morning glow. He peered at Tom, who was now sprawled with his belly exposed, legs stretched in all directions, clearly enjoying the softness of the rug more than anything else. The cat's green eyes flickered open lazily, meeting Jerry's gaze for the briefest moment. Jerry gave a small, quiet squeak, half amusement, half greeting. Tom responded with a slow blink, the kind that carried both acknowledgement and a silent, sleepy invitation. Jerry tilted his head, unsure at first, but decided it was safe. He nudged a tiny paw against Tom's belly, testing the waters. Tom's paw twitched slightly, not in irritation, but in sleepy curiosity. Jerry pulled back, and then pressed forward again, a little braver this time. The kitchen smelled faintly of breakfast toast toasting, milk quietly simmering. Normally, that would have been the signal for a new day of chaos. Tom chasing, Jerry plotting, and the room erupting into familiar, frantic energy. But the truce of last night had carried over into these first fragile morning moments. It was almost magical to watch the world slow down, to see the usual rivals inhabit a rare, peaceful coexistence. Jerry hopped down from Tom's side, careful not to disturb the soft, rhythmic purr that had anchored him through the night. He crept toward a crumb that had been left behind near the rug, nibbling quietly while keeping one eye on the giant cat. Tom, for his part, rolled onto his side with exaggerated grace, stretching his limbs like a lazy lion basking in early sunlight. His movements were slow, unhurried, almost theatrical in their leisure. The house creaked faintly, a gentle reminder of its age, and Tom's ears flicked at each sound, not in alert, not in predatory instinct, but almost in appreciation of the quiet music of the morning. Jerry's tail twitched as he observed this, recognizing the unusual calm that wrapped the two of them. He squeaked softly to himself, a tiny laugh of disbelief. "You actually, enjoy this?" Tom responded with a low rumble, half purr, half grunt, a sound that could have been agreement or just the pleasure of stretching after a long night. Jerry hopped onto a nearby book, using it as a perch to survey the room. From this vantage, the world seemed vast, yet safe. The sun glinted off the hardwood floor, the shadows of the furniture stretching long and soft. Even the dust motes danced lazily in the light, suspended in the warmth of the morning. A gentle breeze wafted through the window, fluttering the curtains. Tom's fur rippled slightly, and Jerry shivered with delight at the sensation. He twitched his whiskers and let the breeze carry the scent of the garden inside. Flowers, grass, and earth mingled in a quiet perfume that made even the most cautious mouse feel adventurous. Tom's eyes half closed as the sunlight touched them. The usual glint of cunning softened into sleepy contentment. Jerry watched him, fascinated, as the cat rolled slightly, stretching out fully before settling again into a perfect loaf-like shape on the rug. It was comical, yet somehow majestic, a king of leisure, ruling a kingdom of quiet and warmth. Minutes passed. The clock ticked softly, the kettle whistled faintly, and the hum of early morning life outside barely intruded. Jerry hopped down to Tom's tail, giving it a small, experimental tug. Tom twitched, then let out a soft snore laugh that made Jerry freeze in surprise. The sound was harmless, almost friendly. Jerry squeaked a tiny laugh in response, and for a moment, the two sat in companionable silence. Even the smallest details of the room seemed amplified in their stillness. The glow of the sun on the polished wood, the faint hum of the refrigerator, the soft sway of the curtains. It was a world bathed in calm, a sanctuary for two creatures who had spent so long in chaos. Jerry hopped closer again, brushing his tiny nose against Tom's paw. The cat twitched once, then stretched further, pressing gently against Jerry without realizing it. The mouse gave a soft squeak of approval, recognizing this simple act as a sign of trust. And in that quiet, shared space, the morning hours became their own gentle adventure. Jerry stretched himself fully, curling his tiny paws under his body before hopping lightly onto the arm of the sofa. From there, he could see the full expanse of the living room, the way the sun cast a warm, golden glow across the floor. For a mouse who had spent so many mornings dodging paws, leaping from shelves, and planning escapes, this view felt luxurious, peaceful, almost indulgent. Tom, still sprawled on the rug, lazily opened one green eye to watch Jerry's antics. There was curiosity there, certainly, but no spark of malice. He let out a soft, almost melodic purr that vibrated through the floorboards, a gentle rhythm that seemed to steady the little mouse in ways he hadn't known he needed. Jerry squeaked softly, half to himself, half to the cat. "You're acting strange." Tom responded with a low grunt, rolling onto his side so his back pressed slightly against the sofa. His tail flicked lazily, brushing against the floor with a soft swish. The movement was not threatening, not mischievous, just a slow, deliberate stretch that spoke of comfort and trust. Encouraged, Jerry ventured further, hopping down from the armrest and trotting toward the kitchen. The smell of toasted bread was stronger now, mingled with the faint aroma of melted butter. Tom's ears twitched at the sound of movement, but he didn't rise. He didn't even blink fully. Instead, he let the mouse go, his tail occasionally flicking in time with the purr that rumbled softly beneath him. Jerry paused by the refrigerator, his tiny hands tracing the cool metal. He hesitated, unsure whether to climb up for a better view, but then he remembered the truce, the magical, unspoken agreement that neither would pounce, neither would chase. With a quiet squeak of excitement, he scrambled up the side, using the magnets and labels as footholds, until he perched triumphantly at the top. From above, he could see Tom stretched out on the rug, his chest rising and falling with perfect, steady rhythm. The purr vibrated faintly through the floor, sending tiny shivers up Jerry's whiskers. He giggled softly, a delicate, almost musical squeak that didn't disturb the cat at all. Tom's eye twitched open slightly, catching Jerry's laughter. He let out a long, lazy sigh, almost like a chuckle, and rolled halfway onto his stomach, keeping one eye on the mouse. His expression was sleepy but amused, a far cry from the scheming glare usually reserved for Jerry's antics. Jerry, emboldened, hopped from the refrigerator top toward the counter, exploring the vast, sunlit expanse. He nudged a butter dish gently with his paw, then paused to look at Tom. The cat's purr had slowed into an almost meditative rhythm, and Jerry felt a strange sense of companionship. He squeaked softly as if to say, "You're not so bad when you're not chasing me." Tom twitched a whisker, as if acknowledging the sentiment. Then he stretched again, his limbs long and elegant, showing the effortless grace that only a cat could possess even in moments of pure laziness. Jerry watched in fascination, marveling at the contrast between the predator he had always feared and the gentle giant sprawled before him. A beam of sunlight fell across Tom's fur, highlighting the stripes and making them gleam like liquid gold. Jerry's eyes sparkled in reflection, and he moved closer, brushing his tiny body against the cat's side. Tom's tail twitched once, then lay still. He didn't react in the slightest. No swat, no hiss, no lunge, only warmth, only purr. The refrigerator hummed faintly. The kettle on the stove hissed softly, and somewhere outside a bird called to its mate. The house was alive, yet every sound seemed to belong to this slow, measured morning rather than to chaos or chase. Jerry hopped down to the rug, kneading the soft carpet with tiny paws, enjoying the sensation as much as the quiet companionship. Tom rolled onto his back once more, stretching out like a lazy sunbeam himself, his eyes half closed. He let out a long sigh, his purr shifting to a deeper, more contented vibration. Jerry curled beside him for warmth, their breaths forming a gentle rhythm together. The truce, unspoken and delicate, had carried them through the night and now into the morning. There was an odd beauty in the simple routine, a cat resting, a mouse exploring, two creatures bound not by fear or rivalry, but by a shared understanding of calm and comfort. Minutes ticked by slowly. Jerry's tiny nose twitched, sniffing the faint aroma of buttered toast and warm floors. Tom shifted lazily, stretching a paw across the rug, brushing Jerry lightly in what felt like a gentle nudge. The mouse squeaked softly, amused, but he stayed put. The trust between them felt fragile, yes, but also wonderfully tangible. Sunlight crept higher, casting long stripes across the floor that mirrored Tom's own markings. Jerry lay flat, whiskers brushing the carpet. Tiny ears perked. Tom's purr filled the quiet air, steady and unwavering. Together they existed in a world stripped of conflict, a rare morning free from mischief, a gentle pause in their otherwise chaotic lives. The morning stretched on lazily, golden light spilling through the windows and warming the rug where Tom lay sprawled. Jerry padded softly along the floor, exploring the corners of the room he rarely had the luxury to examine. His tiny paws made almost no sound, the hush of the morning keeping him adventurous but cautious, like a tiny explorer charting a peaceful land. Tom, for his part, remained sprawled across the rug, watching the mouse with one half-lidded eye. He gave a low, amused purr, the sound vibrating faintly beneath Jerry's paws as the little mouse scurried about. Usually any movement on the rug would trigger a snap of claws or a playful swipe, but today the cat only observed with lazy interest, occasionally stretching a paw without the slightest hint of menace. Jerry climbed up the side of the couch, tiny claws gripping the fabric. From this vantage point, he could see the sunlight glinting across the floor, highlighting motes of dust that danced lazily in the air. It was a peaceful, almost magical scene, one he had never truly appreciated before. Normally, the sunlight meant nothing more than a chance to spot a shadow under which to hide, but today it seemed to welcome him, bathing him in warmth instead of danger. Tom's tail flicked once as the mouse reached the top of the couch, then lay still. He yawned widely, exposing a row of tiny teeth, and then rolled onto his side again. The movement was smooth and unhurried, almost exaggerated in its leisure, as if he were aware of how funny he looked, but too comfortable to care. Jerry squeaked softly, a small sound of amusement, and tiptoed closer to observe the full stretch. The smell of warm toast drifted from the kitchen. Jerry's nose twitched, tiny whiskers quivering with curiosity. He hopped lightly down from the couch and made his way to the edge of the kitchen tiles. Tom's ears flicked at the sound, but he didn't move. There was no lunge, no swat, no chase. The cat's half-lidded green eyes simply tracked Jerry's movements with lazy curiosity, and the purr continued like a soft melody across the room. Jerry found a small crumb left behind from breakfast preparations and nibbled at it quietly. He looked over his shoulder at Tom, half expecting the cat to make a sudden move. But Tom remained sprawled in utter relaxation, his head resting on a paw, one eye open and one closed. The soft rumble of the purr was steady, grounding Jerry in the odd sensation of safety. Encouraged, Jerry tiptoed closer, pressing his tiny nose against Tom's fur. The cat twitched slightly as if acknowledging the touch, then shifted lazily to expose a broader patch of warmth. Jerry pressed against it, feeling the steady rise and fall of Tom's chest. The cat exhaled a long, drawn-out sigh, one of pure contentment, and rolled partially onto his back again. A gentle breeze drifted through the open window, lifting the curtains and carrying the scent of grass and morning flowers inside. Jerry's whiskers twitched as he inhaled, delighting in the fragrance. He scuttled along the edge of the rug, chasing after a stray sunbeam that flickered across the floor. Tom's tail flicked in response, but not to strike, merely following the movement, as though curious about the mouse's antics. The mouse hopped onto a low table to get a better view of the sunlight cascading across the room. Tom lazily followed with his eyes, purring softly the entire time. Jerry balanced carefully, exploring the tabletop with tiny, precise movements, his eyes bright with the thrill of a world temporarily free of danger. Suddenly, a faint squeak echoed from the refrigerator as the butter wrapper shifted slightly. Jerry froze mid-step, ears twitching. Tom twitched an ear too, his tail lifting ever so slightly. But neither reacted with alarm. Instead, the cat's purr deepened, resonating gently through the floor, a subtle reminder to Jerry that he was safe. Encouraged, the mouse continued his cautious exploration, nibbling a piece of paper wrapper from the counter and then hopping down to continue along the floor. Time seemed to stretch, measured only by the soft purr, the gentle sunlight, and the slow, rhythmic sound of their breathing. Jerry curled briefly around a small patch of warm sun on the rug, then stretched out toward Tom, who remained sprawled like a living pillow. The comfort was undeniable, a sense of companionship neither of them had expected, but both silently appreciated. The household was alive in the softest ways, a distant drip from the sink, the quiet hum of the refrigerator, the rustle of curtains in the morning breeze. Each sound blended into a gentle symphony, punctuated by the steady purr and the occasional squeak of Jerry exploring. Together, the cat and mouse existed in a world where no chase was needed, where no tricks were played, and where calm reigned supreme. The morning slowly unfolded, each passing moment stretching like a soft ribbon of light across the room. Jerry scuttled along the edge of the rug, his tiny paws brushing against the threads, while Tom remained sprawled in the sunbeam, his green eyes half closed in serene amusement. The cat's purr resonated gently through the floorboards, a steady hum that seemed to make the very walls of the house sigh in contentment. Jerry hopped lightly onto a stack of books near the window, peering out at the garden beyond. The flowers were bathed in morning light, the petals glistening with dew. A butterfly flitted lazily among the blooms, and Jerry's eyes followed it, whiskers twitching in delight. Tom shifted slightly on the rug, his head turning to watch the mouse with half-hearted curiosity. His tail flicked once, not in irritation, but in rhythm with the soft vibration of his purr. Encouraged by the calm, Jerry hopped down from the books and approached the sofa. He rubbed against the soft upholstery, then carefully climbed onto Tom's side. The cat didn't flinch. He merely adjusted his paw slightly, allowing the mouse to settle against him. It was a delicate dance of trust and warmth, a morning ritual neither had expected, but both now embraced. The smell of breakfast lingered faintly in the air, and Jerry's nose twitched at the scent. Normally, such aromas would trigger an instinct to scurry or steal, perhaps a daring leap onto the counter to snatch a morsel. But today, the truce held firm. Jerry's small paws patted quietly, and he found a tiny crumb that had fallen behind the sofa. He nibbled at it with careful attention, glancing at Tom occasionally, as if to make sure the giant feline was still content with their peaceful arrangement. Tom rolled slightly onto his stomach, stretching his legs with exaggerated elegance, his eyes half opened, observing Jerry's antics with a mild amusement. The cat's usual scheming glare was replaced by a gentle curiosity, a rare glimpse into the softer side of a creature known for mischief. Jerry squeaked softly, delighting in this unusual version of his rival. He hopped closer, brushing his tiny nose against Tom's paw. The cat twitched slightly, then shifted to accommodate the mouse's warmth. Outside, the wind stirred the branches of the trees, rustling leaves softly against the window. Sunlight danced across the floor, highlighting the soft curves of Tom's fur and the tiny movements of Jerry's whiskers. The house seemed to breathe with them, a living space in harmony with the gentle rhythms of the morning. Jerry's tail swished lazily as he stretched along the rug, his small body curling in contentment against the cat. Tom let out a long, lazy yawn, his jaws stretching wide before he rolled onto his back again, paws extended. His purr deepened, a low, steady vibration that matched the soft hum of life around them. Jerry pressed closer, feeling the comforting warmth seep through his tiny body. The mouse closed his eyes for a moment, letting the slow pulse of the purr lull him into a state of near sleep, a rarity for a creature usually defined by vigilance and speed. A bird chirped outside, its delicate song floating through the open window. Jerry's ears twitched, and he opened his eyes briefly to watch the fluttering wings of a sparrow. Tom stirred at the sound, ears flicking, but he did not rise. The purr continued, steady and soothing, grounding the mouse in the calm of this peaceful morning. Minutes drifted lazily by. Jerry explored the edges of the rug, paused to nibble another crumb, and then returned to curl against Tom. The cat rolled once more, belly up, tail lazily swishing. Their breathing fell into a shared rhythm, a quiet duet of predator and prey, each understanding that the truce was not fragile, but gently enduring. For the first time, the house had a morning free of frantic chases and scattered furniture, free of cunning schemes and squeaky escapes. It was a morning held entirely in stillness, punctuated only by small gestures, a twitch of whiskers, a lazy blink, the soft vibration of a purr. Jerry's tiny body pressed against Tom, and in that simple contact lay a profound, unspoken trust. The world outside continued its slow awakening, but inside, time moved differently. Here sunbeams lingered longer, shadows softened, and even the hum of the refrigerator seemed to synchronize with the calm rhythm of their breathing. The morning, usually a herald of chaos, had been transformed into a sanctuary. And in that sanctuary, cat and mouse existed not as adversaries, but as companions, bound by the fragile, yet comforting thread of their quiet truce. Jerry nestled closer to Tom, tiny paws tucked under his body, whiskers brushing against the cat's fur. Tom's purr thrummed steadily, a comforting heartbeat that filled the quiet morning air. Neither moved, neither spoke, yet both felt the profound ease of shared stillness. Sunlight streamed fully into the room now, gilding the rug and casting long, lazy shadows. Even the dust motes seemed to float with calm, caught in the golden light, drifting slowly as if in sync with their breathing. Outside, birds sang and leaves rustled. Yet inside, time had slowed. The house held them both in a gentle embrace, a sanctuary for the truce they silently honored. And so, predator and prey, cat and mouse, lay together in warmth and quiet. A rare morning, free from mischief, free from chase, and alive only with the simple, profound comfort of being at peace. For this brief, perfect moment, the world belonged to them both. The morning sunlight had stretched and softened into the mellow glow of early afternoon. The house was warm, and the quiet truce from the morning had lingered, settling into a comfortable rhythm. Tom lay sprawled across the rug, one paw draped lazily over a scattering of books, while Jerry peeked from behind the sofa, tiny ears twitching as he surveyed the calm space around him. With a tentative squeak, Jerry ventured forward, hopping onto the rug. Tom's eye followed him lazily, half open, showing no hint of the usual predatory glare. The purr continued, a low rhythmic hum that filled the room like a gentle drumbeat. Jerry paused for a moment, his tiny nose twitching in delight at the familiar vibrations. He stepped closer, brushing against Tom's paw, testing the limits of their silent agreement. Tom's tail flicked once, lazily, a subtle acknowledgement, and then rested again. Encouraged, Jerry crept toward the armchair, climbing its side with careful precision. From this higher vantage point, he could see the sun slanting through the curtains, casting long streaks of light across the floor. Each beam seemed like a soft path, inviting him to explore, Normally, such exploration would have triggered a frantic chase, with Tom springing from his rug to scatter the mouse with skillful swipes. But today the cat remained still, his limbs splayed in the purest expression of relaxation. Jerry's curiosity got the better of him, and he hopped to the top of the armchair. He paused to look down at Tom, whiskers twitching in amusement. "You're really not going to move, huh?" he squeaked softly. Tom responded with a low rumble, part purr, part contented sigh, and shifted slightly to expose his belly even more. It was a gesture so unlike his usual cunning and mischief that Jerry couldn't help but let out a small squeak of laughter. With newfound bravery, Jerry scuttled down the back of the chair and onto the armrest, peering over to the coffee table. Sunlight glimmered across the polished wood, highlighting crumbs from a forgotten snack. He sniffed delicately, his tiny paws pressing against the table as he inspected his potential prize. Tom's eyes followed the movement, one green iris barely visible beneath his drooping eyelid. He made no move to interfere, only let out a soft, almost musical purr that seemed to say, "Go on, little one." The mouse's confidence grew, and he hopped onto the table, balancing on the edge with a tiny squeak of delight. He nudged a small crumb toward himself, nibbling quietly as he surveyed the room. Tom's tail flicked idly in response, tracing patterns in the sunlit rug. The purr continued, steady and comforting, a background melody to Jerry's tentative exploration. Outside, the garden rustled as the breeze picked up. Leaves danced lightly, and a bird's soft call drifted through the open window. Jerry's ears twitched, his nose sniffing the fresh scents, and he hopped to the windowsill, peering outside. Tom, still on the rug, turned his head lazily to watch the mouse. His eyes followed every movement, not with hunger or mischief, but with something softer, awareness, curiosity, and a strange, comforting patience. Jerry squeaked in surprise at a butterfly that flitted near the window. Its wings caught the sunlight, casting delicate shadows that danced across the floor. For a moment, both mouse and cat were still, captivated by the fragile beauty of the creature. Tom's paw twitched as if to reach, then stopped. Jerry's tiny body froze, unsure if the calm would hold, and then realized the truce remained. The butterfly floated gracefully, unconcerned, as if it, too, were part of this shared moment of peace. The afternoon passed with gentle exploration. Jerry hopped from windowsill to table, sniffed at the crumbs, and paused to watch Tom stretch luxuriously across the rug. The cat yawned widely, exposing teeth that would normally strike fear into the mouse, but today they were harmless. The purr continued, like a steady hum of contentment. Jerry even dared to scamper across Tom's back briefly, pausing mid-leap to ensure the cat remained unmoved. Tom merely twitched an ear, then rolled slightly to adjust his comfort. Time seemed suspended. Sunlight shifted across the room, highlighting every tiny movement. The twitch of Jerry's whiskers, the slow sway of Tom's tail, the way dust motes caught the light and floated lazily through the air. There was no rush, no tension, no need for strategy or cunning, only the quiet rhythm of two creatures who had learned for the first time how to simply coexist. Jerry's tiny paws padded softly across the rug, moving closer to Tom's sprawled form. He stopped beside the cat's side and gently brushed his nose against the soft fur. Tom's tail flicked lazily, a subtle acknowledgement that the mouse's presence was welcome. There was no glint of mischief in the cat's eyes, only that calm, lazy curiosity that had been growing since the morning. The sunlight shifted slightly, casting long golden stripes across the rug. Jerry's whiskers twitched in delight at the warmth, and he stretched himself fully, feeling the comforting heat of Tom's body beside him. He pressed closer, nestling against the cat's side as he would a pillow, feeling the gentle vibration of the purr through his tiny frame. It was a sensation that would have seemed impossible just a day ago, yet here it was, comfort, safety, and warmth all in one. Tom rolled onto his stomach, his legs stretching wide before curling slightly. He let out a soft, contented sigh, as though acknowledging the small companion who had taken refuge against him. Jerry's tiny heart skipped a beat, a squeak escaping in amusement. It was as if the cat were telling him, "It's okay. You belong here too." Encouraged, Jerry climbed lightly onto Tom's back, balancing carefully as he explored. Normally, this would have triggered a swift chase, with Tom springing up, swiping with lightning speed. But today, the cat remained perfectly still, purring steadily, tail draped lazily across the floor. The mouse squeaked softly in delight, taking in the view from this new, elevated perspective. From his perch, Jerry could see the sunlight glinting off the polished wood of the coffee table, the reflections dancing across Tom's fur. The soft hum of the refrigerator, the gentle rustle of curtains in the breeze, even the distant call of a bird outside, everything blended into a perfect symphony of calm. Jerry stretched, tiny paws flexing, and pressed his cheek gently against Tom's fur. The purr deepened, vibrating through him, carrying a sense of security he had never felt before. Tom twitched his whiskers in response, eyes half closed in indulgent relaxation. He let out a low rumble, almost like a soft chuckle, acknowledging Jerry's presence without moving. The cat's patience, unusual as it was, seemed infinite. Jerry, emboldened, ventured further along the back of the rug, tiptoeing near the edge of the sunlight. He paused, turning back to glance at Tom, and squeaked softly as if asking, "Are you sure you won't chase me?" Tom only purred in reply, a vibration so steady that Jerry relaxed completely. The mouse hopped down and explored a fallen book, sniffing at the pages and occasionally nibbling gently at the corners. Tom watched without interference, occasionally flicking his tail in mild curiosity, a silent companion in Jerry's slow, careful adventure. Time passed in this gentle rhythm. Jerry climbed back onto the sofa arm, then leapt to the windowsill, peering outside at the garden, bathed in afternoon light. Butterflies flitted lazily among the flowers, and a gentle breeze carried their delicate scent into the room. Jerry's ears twitched as he followed their flight, tiny whiskers quivering with a fascination. Tom's head turned slightly, watching him with a relaxed eye. He twitched an ear, then let it drop again, his purr a steady anchor to the tranquil scene. The mouse hopped down from the windowsill and scurried along the edge of the rug, brushing against Tom's paw. The cat twitched in response, not with attack, but in gentle acknowledgement of the mouse's exploration. Jerry squeaked softly, delighted by the lack of reaction. He scampered over a fallen pillow, testing Tom's patience further, but the cat simply rolled lazily onto his back, stretching a paw across the rug without a thought of mischief. Even the dust motes seemed to linger longer in the sunlight, drifting slowly, catching the light, as if suspended in time. Jerry paused to watch them float, whiskers twitching in fascination. Tom yawned widely, the motion so slow and exaggerated, it seemed almost comical, yet the purr never faltered, grounding Jerry in a sense of comfort. The house itself seemed to sigh with contentment, every creak and whisper blending into the rhythm of the afternoon. Jerry pressed closer to Tom, nestling against his side, feeling the warmth and hearing the steady purr. For the first time, predator and prey shared the same space in complete harmony, discovering a world without chase, a world held together only by trust, calm, and gentle curiosity. The afternoon sun began to mellow, spilling a warmer, more amber glow across the living room. Tom stretched lazily, rolling onto his side with a soft grunt, exposing his belly to the light. Jerry twitched his whiskers, watching with fascination. He hopped closer, brushing his tiny nose along Tom's fur, marveling at the sensation of warmth and vibration from the steady purr. It was a comfort he had never experienced during the frantic mornings of chasing and hiding. Encouraged by the cat's stillness, Jerry ventured further across the rug, exploring the patterns of sunlight on the floor. Each ray created a golden path he could follow, and he padded along carefully, delighting in the way the light warmed his tiny paws. Tom's green eyes followed him lazily, flicking open now and then, showing no glint of predatory intent, only the relaxed amusement of a creature at ease in its own world. Jerry paused at the edge of a low table, sniffing the crumbs left behind from breakfast. He nibbled delicately, mindful of the truce, and glanced back at Tom, who had rolled onto his back again. Paws flopped casually across the rug. The cat let out a soft, contented rumble, the purr vibrating through the floor and into Jerry's tiny body. The mouse squeaked softly in delight, his tail curling with happiness. The garden outside the window shifted in the gentle breeze. Leaves danced, birds chirped, and the scent of flowers floated inside, mingling with the faint aroma of toast. Jerry hopped onto the windowsill, pressing his tiny paws against the glass, peering out at the world beyond. Tom turned his head slightly to watch him, eyes half closed, a lazy flick of his tail acknowledging the mouse's curiosity. Jerry's ears twitched as a butterfly flitted past. Its delicate wings sparkled in the sunlight, casting tiny shadows on the floor. For a brief moment, both cat and mouse paused in their movements, captivated by the simple beauty of the creature. Tom's paw twitched almost reflexively, but he didn't strike. He exhaled a long, soft sigh, and the purr deepened. Jerry squeaked a tiny laugh, delighting in the rare stillness of the moment. Encouraged, Jerry hopped down from the sill and trotted across the rug, brushing against Tom's side. The cat twitched lazily in response, then rolled slightly to accommodate the mouse's presence. It was a gentle dance, a rhythm of trust that neither had known possible before. The afternoon seemed to stretch on endlessly, golden light casting long shadows, creating a serene, almost magical world where mischief and chaos had no place. Jerry's curiosity got the better of him, and he climbed atop the armchair, peering across the room. From this height, he could see the sunlight illuminating Tom's striped fur, highlighting the subtle movements of the tail and the rise and fall of the chest. The cat's purr vibrated gently, a comforting background to Jerry's observation. He squeaked softly, brushing his tiny paws along the edge of the chair, testing boundaries that had once been deadly. The mouse hopped down onto the rug again, moving closer to Tom's paws. The cat stretched one long leg lazily toward him, brushing the tiny mouse gently. Jerry froze in surprise, then squeaked with delight. The touch was soft, almost protective, and he pressed closer to the warmth of Tom's body. The purr deepened, vibrating through him like a heartbeat in the quiet afternoon. Minutes passed. Jerry explored the rug and sofa, climbed the armchair, and pressed his tiny nose against crumbs and fabric alike. Tom remained mostly immobile, save for occasional stretches and yawns, his green eyes following every movement with lazy amusement. The rhythm of their breathing and the steady purr of the cat created a gentle melody that filled the room with calm. The sunlight shifted, casting long, warm stripes across the floor and highlighting the tiny dust motes that danced lazily in the air. Jerry pressed closer to Tom, curling his body against the cat's side. He twitched his whiskers, inhaling the warm scent of fur and sunlit wood. Tom's tail swept slowly across the rug, brushing Jerry gently, a subtle acknowledgement, the bond that had begun to form. For the first time in their lives, predator and prey existed in perfect harmony. There were no schemes, no frantic chases, no daring escapes. There was only warmth, light, and the quiet, steady rhythm of two creatures discovering the rare joy of companionship. The afternoon seemed endless, stretching lazily across sunbeams, dust motes, and purring vibrations that held both cat and mouse in a shared state of comfort and peace. The warmth of the afternoon seemed to seep into every corner of the living room. Jerry moved cautiously across the rug, tiny paws making almost no sound as he explored the sunlit spaces. He paused at a corner, sniffing the faint aroma of a forgotten snack, then hopped lightly onto the low coffee table. From this vantage point, he could see Tom sprawled luxuriously on the rug, limbs stretched out, eyes half-lidded, utterly content. The cat's purr resonated through the floor, a deep rhythmic hum that filled the room with calm. Jerry pressed forward, moving along the edge of the table and pausing to peer at Tom. The cat's tail flicked lazily, brushing against the scattered book, but no attempt at mischief or swat followed. Jerry squeaked softly, a mixture of amazement and delight. He had never seen Tom this patient, this calm, and he pressed closer, brushing his tiny nose against the soft fur. The purr deepened in response, and Jerry's whiskers twitched in happiness. Outside, the breeze rustled through the garden, carrying the delicate scent of flowers into the room. Jerry's ears twitched, tiny nose sniffing the fresh air, and he hopped down from the table to the windowsill. A butterfly flitted past, wings glinting in the sunlight. Jerry froze in awe, whiskers quivering, then squeaked softly. Tom turned his head slightly, eyeing the small spectacle, but remained perfectly still, purring steadily. The butterfly danced through the sunlight, casting fleeting shadows across the rug, the table, and the two unlikely companions. Encouraged, Jerry hopped down to the floor, moving closer to Tom. The cat's paw twitched once as the mouse brushed against his side, then rested again. The purr continued, a steady, soothing vibration that seemed to anchor Jerry in place. For a moment, the two simply existed together, predator and prey, yet bound by the rare truce that had grown from the night before. Jerry explored further, climbing lightly onto the arm of the sofa, then leaping onto a pile of books. From this new height, he could see the golden sunlight illuminating every detail of the room. The polished wood floor, the scattered crumbs, the tiny shadows that danced as the sunlight shifted. Tom's eyes followed him lazily, green irises gleaming softly, and his tail flicked once, acknowledging the mouse without any hint of threat. Time seemed to slow. Jerry hopped down from the books, skidded along the rug, and pressed against Tom's fur again. The cat stretched luxuriously, exposing his belly and letting out a deep, contented sigh. Jerry pressed closer, basking in the warmth, feeling the gentle vibrations of the purr through his tiny body. It was a sensation of safety and comfort that had been unimaginable just a day ago. The house itself seemed to participate in the calm. The gentle hum of the refrigerator, the faint creak of the floorboards, and the soft rustle of the curtains in the breeze all blended seamlessly with the purr and the occasional squeak of Jerry exploring. Sunlight shifted across the room, highlighting motes of dust that floated lazily in the air, catching both their attention. Jerry hopped onto the sofa, then back down, moving with delicate precision, always aware of the boundaries of the truce. Tom watched each movement, occasionally twitching an ear or flicking a tail, but never more. The rhythm of their breathing, the slow shifts of the sun, and the steady purr wove together into a gentle melody that held both of them in a state of quiet bliss. Minutes melted into one another. Jerry pressed closer to Tom's side, curling his small body against the warmth. Tom rolled slightly, adjusting his position to accommodate the tiny companion, tail brushing gently across the rug. The afternoon light softened, turning the room into a sanctuary of warmth, trust, and serene companionship. In this moment, all the usual chaos, all the frantic chases and daring escapes seemed a distant memory. Instead, there was comfort, gentle exploration, and the rare magic of a predator and prey discovering that peace was not only possible, but wonderful. The sunlight lingered longer, dust motes danced in slow arcs, and the purr held steady, a lullaby for both cat and mouse. Jerry twitched his whiskers in delight, pressing his nose once more against Tom's fur. The cat purred louder, a low, steady vibration that filled the room. The world outside continued its afternoon bustle, but inside, time had slowed to the rhythm of warmth, companionship, and shared trust. The sunlight softened further, spilling a golden glow that wrapped around both Tom and Jerry. The mouse nestled closer to the cat, tiny paws tucked beneath him, whiskers brushing against Tom's soft fur. The steady purr vibrated like a heartbeat, soothing and warm, filling the room with a quiet, unspoken companionship. Tom rolled slightly, stretching one long paw across the rug, brushing Jerry gently. The mouse squeaked softly in delight, pressing closer without fear. Outside, the garden swayed in the breeze, birds called softly, and leaves rustled. But inside, the world seemed paused, held in perfect stillness. Predator and prey, rivals and companions, shared this rare afternoon together. For a fleeting moment, chaos, mischief, and chase no longer mattered. Only warmth, trust, and the gentle rhythm of shared calm remained a quiet truce that felt timeless, if only for now. The sun had begun its slow descent, casting a warm amber glow across the living room. Shadows stretched long, blending softly with the golden light, turning the familiar room into a gentle tapestry of color and warmth. Tom lay sprawled across the rug, one paw lazily draped over a pile of books, eyes half closed in serene contentment. Jerry, feeling bolder after the day of quiet companionship, ventured along the edge of the rug, whiskers twitching as he explored the sunlit patches of floor. A faint breeze drifted through the slightly open window, lifting the curtains in delicate waves. The scent of the garden, earthy soil, blooming flowers, and the faint sweetness of ripening fruit drifted inside. Jerry paused to sniff the air, tiny nose quivering in delight. Tom's ears twitched lazily at the movement, but he didn't stir. The purr continued, steady and soothing, like a soft drumbeat in the background of the quiet room. Jerry hopped lightly onto the arm of the sofa, then peeked over at the coffee table. A single sunbeam fell across its surface, highlighting crumbs left from the morning. He squeaked softly, amused at the tiny remnants, then carefully hopped down to nibble at one. Tom's tail twitched ever so slightly, brushing the rug as if following the rhythm of Jerry's careful movements, yet no hint of the usual chase appeared. The room seemed suspended in time. Even the faint hum of the refrigerator blended with the purr and the soft rustle of the curtains, creating a gentle symphony of calm. Jerry's tiny body pressed closer to Tom as he moved along the rug, whiskers brushing against the warm fur. Tom's paw shifted just enough to accommodate the mouse, a subtle gesture of acceptance that spoke volumes in silence. Outside, the fading sunlight illuminated the garden in soft golds and muted greens. Birds chirped their last songs before the night, and a gentle breeze made the leaves dance lazily. Jerry's ears twitched at the sound, and he hopped to the windowsill, peering outside at the peaceful scene. Tom, still on the rug, followed his tiny companion's movements, with lazy eyes occasionally giving a soft blink that seemed almost like a nod of approval. Encouraged by the calm, Jerry explored further, hopping lightly across the rug, sniffing at a forgotten crumb, and pressing against Tom's side whenever he paused. The purr responded in kind, a low, steady vibration that radiated warmth. The cat stretched once, legs splayed wide, then rolled onto his back, belly exposed in pure relaxation. Jerry pressed closer, curling his tiny body into the cat's warmth, feeling the heartbeat-like rhythm of the purr beneath him. Shadows deepened as the sun dipped lower, painting the walls with long, soft lines of gold and amber. Jerry hopped atop the armchair, balancing carefully, then peered down at Tom with a squeak of amusement. The cat merely shifted lazily, tail flicking once, eyes following the mouse's movements, without the slightest hint of mischief. The harmony between them had grown more profound with each passing hour, an unspoken agreement of trust and gentle companionship. The warmth of the room, the soft purr, and the general golden light created a cocoon of comfort. Jerry hopped down to the rug once more, tiny paws kneading the soft fibers as he pressed against Tom. Tom exhaled a long, satisfied sigh, stretching luxuriously, eyes half-lidded in contentment. The purr deepened, a constant, soothing vibration that resonated through both their bodies. The house, bathed in fading light, seemed to breathe along with them. Every creak of the floor, every soft rustle of the curtains, and every faint hum from the kitchen blended into the peaceful symphony of the evening. Jerry pressed his tiny nose against Tom's fur one last time before settling down fully beside him, curling into a small, warm ball. Minutes passed slowly, measured only by the soft rhythm of breathing, the gentle purr, and the slanting light across the rug. Outside, the world began to darken, but inside, predator and prey lay together in an unprecedented peace. The quiet truce that had begun the night before and strengthened through the day now held firm in the calm of evening. The golden light began to fade, slipping quietly through the windows and giving way to the soft hues of dusk. Shadows grew longer, stretching across the rug and walls, blending with the gentle warmth that still lingered in the room. Tom remained sprawled lazily on the rug, one paw flopped across the floor, tail twitching occasionally as if keeping rhythm with the quiet movements around him. His green eyes tracked Jerry's tiny figure as the mouse explored, but there was no glimmer of mischief, only calm curiosity. Jerry patted softly along the rug, whiskers twitching in delight at the shifting shadows. The mouse paused near Tom's paw, pressing gently against the warm fur. Tom twitched in acknowledgement, tail brushing the rug in a slow, lazy arc. Jerry squeaked softly, encouraged by the cat's patience, and climbed lightly onto a low stack of books nearby. From this vantage point, he could see the sun sinking lower, bathing the room in a gentle amber glow. The quiet of the house was almost magical. Even the faint hum of the refrigerator and the soft rustle of the curtains seemed to join in the rhythm of the evening. Jerry hopped down from the books and trotted across the rug to a small sunbeam still lingering near the window. He pressed against Tom's side, tiny paws kneading the soft fur as if testing the boundaries of trust. Tom responded with a long, slow purr, vibrating steadily through the floor and into Jerry's tiny body, a gentle reassurance that the truce was still alive. Outside, the garden darkened gradually, yet the fading light caught the tips of the flowers and leaves, making them shimmer like tiny jewels. Jerry's ears twitched at the sound of birds calling their final songs before nightfall. He hopped lightly to the windowsill, peering outside with fascination, while Tom's eyes followed him lazily. The cat shifted slightly, one paw stretching across the rug, brushing the mouse gently as if to say, "You're safe here." Encouraged by the calm, Jerry explored further. He hopped onto the arm of the sofa, then down to the floor, pressing against Tom's fur whenever he paused. The cat's purr deepened, a low, steady vibration that resonated through the room. Jerry pressed closer, curling into the warmth. Tiny body nestled against the larger, comforting form of the cat. Tom rolled slightly, stretching his legs with luxurious ease, and let out a long, contented sigh. As the sun dipped completely behind the trees, the room took on a soft, dusky glow. The golden light gave way to cooler tones of twilight, painting the walls and floor in muted shades. Jerry hopped onto the back of the couch and perched there, looking down at Tom with wide, curious eyes. The cat's tail twitched slowly in response, a gentle movement that kept time with the purr. Neither spoke. Neither moved too quickly. The moment was too perfect, too serene to break. A gentle breeze drifted through the window, lifting the curtains and carrying the faint fragrance of flowers and evening air into the room. Jerry's tiny nose twitched as he sniffed the breeze, then pressed against Tom's side again for warmth. Tom purred steadily, tail flicking once in gentle rhythm, his eyes half-lidded in contentment. The room felt like a sanctuary, a cocoon of peace that seemed to stretch endlessly. Minutes passed, slow and unhurried. Jerry hopped from the rug to the armchair, then back down, always careful, always aware of the boundaries of their truce. Tom stretched again, rolling onto his back, belly exposed, and let out a long, satisfied sigh. Jerry pressed closer, curling into the warmth and the vibration of the purr. Outside, the sky shifted from dusky gold to soft violet, signaling the approach of night. The house seemed to hold its breath in the fading light. Dust motes floated lazily in the last rays of sun, catching the glow and drifting slowly like tiny stars. Jerry pressed his cheek against Tom's fur, eyes half closed, whiskers twitching in contentment. Tom's purr resonated steadily beneath him, a comforting melody that seemed to say the truce would hold no matter what. Evening deepened into twilight. The room was quiet, except for the soft purr and the occasional shuffle of Jerry's tiny paws. The house, bathed in fading light, seemed to embrace them both, offering a sanctuary of warmth, trust, and calm. Predator and prey lay side by side, sharing the rarest of afternoons, discovering that peace could exist even in the most unexpected of friendships. The twilight deepened slowly, draping the living room in the soft purples and muted golds. Tom stretched languidly, rolling onto his side with a long, exaggerated yawn. The purr that followed was low and steady, filling the quiet room with a comforting rhythm. Jerry padded softly along the rug, tiny paws making barely a sound, whiskers twitching in delight as he explored the now dimly lit space. He hopped lightly onto the sofa arm, pausing to glance down at Tom, whose green eyes followed him with lazy amusement. The fading light cast long shadows across the floor, creating intricate patterns on the rug and walls. Dust motes floated gently in the air, catching the last rays of sunlight, and Jerry twitched his nose in fascination. He climbed down to the floor and pressed against Tom's side, kneading gently with his tiny paws. Tom's tail swept slowly across the rug, brushing Jerry softly, as though marking the mouse's presence with approval. The purr deepened, vibrating steadily through both their bodies, a comforting soundtrack to the evening. Outside, the garden darkened into soft silhouettes, but the scent of flowers and fresh earth lingered through the open window. Jerry's ears twitched at the evening sounds, a distant bird call, the rustle of leaves, the soft whisper of wind. He hopped onto the windowsill for a better view, tiny nose pressed this to the cool glass. Tom's head turned lazily in his direction, eyes half-lidded, a slow blink acknowledging Jerry's curiosity. No chase, no schemes, only a quiet companionship that had grown deeper as the day waned. Encouraged by the calm, Jerry explored the rug more confidently, skittering along the sunlit patches still lingering from the day. He hopped lightly onto the back of the sofa, then down to the floor again, brushing against Tom whenever he paused. The cat's purr seemed to thrum in response, rising and falling gently with the rhythm of their shared breathing. Tom stretched fully, rolling onto his back and flopping his paws across the rug. Jerry pressed closer, curling his tiny body against the warmth, whiskers brushing soft fur. The room seemed suspended in time. Every sound, the quiet hum of the refrigerator, the soft rustle of curtains, the faint creak of the floorboards blended with the low purr and Jerry's tiny squeaks of exploration. Sunlight had faded completely, replaced by a dusky violet glow, soft and calming. Dust motes drifted lazily in the half-light, highlighting every gentle movement. Jerry pressed his nose once more against Tom's fur, feeling the vibrations of the purr ripple through him like a heartbeat. Minutes stretched into an endless, comforting rhythm. Jerry hopped from the rug to the armchair, exploring its corners and testing the limits of their quiet truce. Tom's eyes followed him, green irises glowing faintly in the dim light. The tail flicked lazily, brushing against the rug and the mouse's tiny paws, an unspoken gesture of trust. The purr remained steady, a constant hum that anchored Jerry in the rare security of the evening. Jerry's whiskers twitched as he explored the small crumbs and scattered dust of the room, hopping lightly across the rug and pressing occasionally against Tom. The cat responded only with stretches, soft rumbles, and the occasional flick of his tail. It was a day's end ritual neither had intended, yet both now savored. A slow dance of quiet companionship, built entirely on trust and gentle curiosity. The window curtain shifted with the soft evening breeze, carrying the mingled scents of flowers and earth into the room. Jerry hopped lightly onto the sofa back for another view of the garden outside, while Tom rolled slightly to accommodate him on the rug. They existed in perfect harmony, predator and prey bound by a fragile but undeniable peace. The purr vibrated steadily beneath them, a soft lullaby for the approaching night. Time seemed to stretch, measured only by the slow, steady purr and Jerry's gentle movements. The room glowed with the fading light, shadows blending softly into one another. Dust motes drifted lazily, floating as if in rhythm with their shared calm. Jerry pressed his tiny body closer to Tom's, feeling warmth, security, and the profound comfort of the quiet truce that had grown over the day. Even the simplest moments were extraordinary. The soft flick of Tom's tail, the gentle rise and fall of his chest, the tiny squeak of Jerry exploring, the rustle of leaves outside, and the fading light pooling across the rug. They were two unlikely friends, bound by an unspoken understanding, savoring the rare serenity of evening in a house that had seen so much chaos before. The room had darkened further now, twilight giving way to the soft embrace of early night. The glow from the fading sun lingered at the edges of the windows, casting muted patterns of light across the walls and floor. Tom lay sprawled across the rug, belly exposed, paws stretched lazily, eyes half-lidded. His purr continued steadily, vibrating gently through the room like a quiet lullaby. Jerry, tiny and curious, scuttled across the rug, whiskers twitching in delight at the soft patterns of shadow and light. He hopped lightly onto the sofa arm, then down to the rug again, always careful not to startle the larger companion. Tom shifted slightly, a slow roll of his paw brushing gently against Jerry's tiny body. The purr deepened in response, steady and warm, wrapping around both of them like a soft, invisible blanket. Jerry squeaked softly in contentment, pressing closer against the cat's side. Outside, the garden had darkened into gentle silhouettes. The soft rustle of leaves in the evening breeze carried the faint fragrance of flowers and fresh earth. A bird called once, its voice fading into the quiet night. Jerry's ears twitched, and he hopped lightly onto the windowsill to observe, tiny paws gripping the edge as he peered out. Tom's green eyes followed him lazily, tail flicking once in acknowledgement. But there was no spark of mischief, only calm, steady awareness. The room itself seemed to breathe with them. Every faint creak of the floorboards, the gentle hum of the refrigerator, and the soft flutter of the curtains blended seamlessly with the purr and Jerry's tiny squeaks of movement. Dust motes floated lazily in the dim light, catching the last glow from outside, tracing delicate arcs as if dancing to the rhythm of the peaceful evening. Jerry hopped onto the back of the sofa, then down again to the rug, exploring tiny crumbs and threads in quiet fascination. Tom's head followed him, eyes half closed, pupils glowing faintly in the low light. The cat stretched once, then rolled slightly, allowing Jerry to press against him. The mouse curled into the warmth, whiskers brushing soft fur, feeling the steady vibration of the purr through his tiny frow. It was a sensation of comfort and safety he had never known in the frantic mornings of chasing and hiding. Minutes passed slowly, unmeasured by clocks or urgency, only by the steady rhythm of breathing, purring, and occasional tiny squeaks. Jerry padded carefully across the rug, pressing against Tom whenever he paused. The cat twitched an ear, tail sweeping lazily, and exhaled a deep, contented sigh. Outside, the evening deepened into night, sky turning soft indigo with scattered stars beginning to shimmer faintly. Jerry hopped lightly back onto the windowsill, gazing at the stars. Tom's eyes followed him, half-lidded, green irises reflecting the faint starlight. A gentle breeze lifted the curtains, carrying the faint scent of the garden into the room. Jerry twitched his nose, inhaling the fragrant air, and pressed against Tom's side again for warmth. The purr deepened, vibrating steadily, a reassuring presence in the slowly darkening room. The peaceful truce they had nurtured over the day now felt timeless. No frantic chases, no playful tricks, only warmth, trust, and quiet companionship. The room was alive with subtle sounds, the soft hum of the refrigerator, the rustle of curtains, the gentle shift of Tom's body, and Jerry's tiny squeaks and padding. Each sound blended into a symphony of calm that held them both in a shared cocoon of comfort. Jerry curled into Tom's side, tiny body pressed against the warm fur. The purr resonated through him, a gentle heartbeat echoing across the quiet room. Tom stretched one paw lazily over the mouse, a silent promise that he was safe. Outside, stars twinkled softly, and the faint glow of the moon began to illuminate the garden. The rhythm of the purr and their breathing merged seamlessly with the gentle night, creating a serene harmony that neither had ever experienced before. As night deepened, Jerry drifted closer to Tom, pressing his tiny cheek against the cat's fur. Tom rolled slightly, allowing the mouse to settle comfortably, tail sweeping lazily across the rug. The room was warm, safe, and still, holding both predator and prey in the rare, perfect balance of trust. The soft purr carried through the quiet evening, a lullaby for both, guiding them gently towards sleep. The room was bathed in the soft glow of moonlight now, shadows stretching gently across the rug. Jerry nestled fully against Tom, tiny paws tucked beneath him, whiskers brushing softly against the warm fur. Tom's purr thrummed steadily, a slow, comforting heartbeat that seemed to cradle them both. Outside, the garden lay in quiet silver light, the faint rustle of leaves and distant call of a night bird blending seamlessly with the room's calm. Tom rolled slightly, tail sweeping lazily over the rug, brushing Jerry's tiny body in a tender gesture of trust. The mouse squeaked softly, settling deeper into the warmth, eyes half closed in serene comfort. Predator and prey, rivals and companions, shared this rare night in perfect harmony. The quiet truce held firm, a fragile, beautiful bond woven through warmth, purrs, and trust. And in that gentle stillness the world faded away, leaving only peace, companionship, and the soft rhythm of breathing as cat and mouse drifted into sleep together. And as night falls, our two unlikely friends rest side by side, wrapped in warmth, trust, and quiet companionship. Let their gentle purrs, the soft rustle of the night, and the calm of their peaceful truce lull you into your own serene slumber. May your dreams be calm, cozy, and full of warmth. Good night, everyone.